I have a particular take on the concept of brutal honesty that I think is important, and I want to talk about it. How does it feel when someone is honest with you? Well, it would entirely depend on what they're being honest about and how open and receptive you feel to whatever it is that they're saying. For example, if someone is honest that they love you and they appreciate you and they're coming clean with their emotions, that might feel really good if you're interested in them. But if someone is being really honest with you and they say something along the lines of like, listen, I don't think this job is for you, here's all the reasons why, it really doesn't matter how compassionate, how sweet, how open they say it to you. If you've had some sort of lens over your eyes and don't actually want to receive that honesty. And I say this because I have been the woman who has received the brutal honesty, the sugar-coated honesty, the compassionate honesty, the kind honesty, etc. And what I want to tell you is that you will experience honesty in any form as brutal if you're not actually open and receptive to the reality you face. It does not matter how somebody is honest with you. You will always experience it as brutal because you're disillusioned. The disillusionment process is brutal. The killing of a fantasy is brutal. It's damn near violent sometimes. Because if you have some sort of distortion or perception of the world that is inaccurate, and someone says, hey, can I be honest with you? They're coming in because they can see that you're operating out of a fantasy and that it's actually doing a disservice. If you are attached to your fantasy, the disillusionment process is going to be painful. When I think of honesty in general, it takes me back to a past relationship I had where I thought he was being honest. I thought he was giving me this like really kind, generous honesty where he was telling me that he really wasn't available for a relationship. And I was like, wow, like, thank you for being so honest, right? It was a truth I was willing and open to hear. I'm just not ready for a relationship. But what was the brutal honesty? That he didn't want a relationship with me. Now, let me tell you, when 2 weeks later I went on Facebook and I saw that he was Facebook official with another girl, I died. My heart shattered. Because in that moment, what I realized was that he sugarcoated, that he lied to me instead of actually being honest. And that's the thing, is people think that compassionate honesty is omitting the brutal parts. But imagine for a moment that he actually told me that he actually said, hey, Steph, I'm really not interested in pursuing a relationship with you. Yeah, it would have been brutal because it would have brought me into presence with disillusionment, right? It would have broken the fantasy that I had that he was the guy or whatever the case might be, but he softened the blow instead. He softened the blow by saying, well, I'm just not ready for a relationship. But that wasn't true. It wasn't honest. See, brutal honesty is not a problem. Brutal honesty is about, hey, I'm actually not clear that you are open and receptive to letting that fantasy that you're holding on to die. I'm not clear that you are willing to let this fantasy go, and I can't enable you anymore. So people tend to lie, omit, sugarcoat, give some other form of honesty, but actually that does more harm than just being really honest. When I looked at his Facebook and I saw that he was Facebook official with someone, the first thing that came up to mind was, oh, he lied to me. I went down this psychosis fucking trail because I had to interpret the truth, the quote unquote truth he told me versus the reality I was now seeing. The disillusionment process for me was way more fucking painful on the back end of his omission of the full brutal truth because I had to deal with the reverb of it versus if he was just willing to be really brutally honest and say, Steph, listen, I'm not really interested in pursuing a relation with you. You know, you're a great girl, not for me. It would have hurt, but it actually would have hurt more in alignment with the true disillusionment rather than the psychosis disillusionment, which was so much more painful. I had to go through this whole fucking journey with it where I realized I was like, oh, he was just never going to be the guy to be really honest with me because I really, really value honesty. And that means that someone is willing to tell me the thing that will break the fantasy. And to do it lovingly is not to have me be saved from the brutality of it. It's to actually allow me to feel the true brutality of my fantasy falling away. Disillusionment is fucking brutal. Coming out of fantasy into reality is fucking brutal. Stepping out of any mental frame of mind that isn't in complete alignment with reality is fucking brutal. It's literally the process of coming into consciousness. And so when you aren't willing to give someone the full honesty, if you're not willing to be brutal where brutality is required, what you're doing is actually further harming them. You're actually not even allowing them to come into consciousness. You're going to allow them to continue their psychosis, to continue their illusions, until reality comes and will smack them in the face much harder than you just being honest. Because let's really think about it. What is the sake of sugarcoating? It's I don't trust how you're going to react to the thing that I got to say. And so because I don't trust that, I don't trust how you're going to react. I'm scared of your reaction. I'm going to sugarcoat, not because I actually care about you, because I care about how you'll react to me giving you the truth. But if I actually cared about you, I would give you the honesty exactly as it is and know that it will hurt, but I'm going to love you here. I'm going to be with you here. I'm going to be with you through the pain and the problem of it. I'm not going to sit here and give you the brutal honesty, the pain and the hurt of the disillusionment, and then fuck off. See, that's the difference. Is that most people, when they're experiencing something like brutal honesty, it's someone saying, can I just be brutally honest? And then they say something and then they go fuck off after. That's not brutal honesty. That's being a cunt, okay? Brutal honesty is, I am here to be of service to you, to the deepest form of you. And so I'm going to say the thing that is going to dismantle this fantasy that you're operating from. And when I do that, I understand it is going to be painful. And I understand that you're going to spin out and you're going to go wild and it's going to hurt. And I'm still going to fucking be here. I am still going to fucking love you in this spot. I am not going to save you from the pain and the brutality of your disillusionment. That's all it is. I go and I look at different aspects of my life and I see the same thing over and over again. Moments where I just begged someone to give me the real thing. I just craved it. I wanted nothing more than someone to just say the honest fucking thing. But the truth is that in this world, we are surrounded by fucking liars and no one wants to call themselves out on it. We're all willing to lie. We're all willing to say the thing that is so much more pleasant, so much more PC and approving by the society at large. No one really wants to be the kind of person that says, hey, I'm going to give you the thing that shatters your whole idea of yourself. And I'm going to love you as you dismantle it. Very few people are willing to do that. Other industry folk share that kind of rhetoric that like, oh, honesty can be compassionate. It's like, some honesty is going to fucking hurt. It doesn't matter how compassionate you are or how kind you are in delivering it. The whole point of being honest is to get clear about what's real. And sometimes if you are operating from a fucking fantasy, getting honest and getting real with what's real fucking hurts. It's just the process. There is no way to avoid the pain of realizing that you've been living a lie. There was nothing that I was going to be able to avoid in facing the fact that this guy was not interested in me, that I thought he was. There was a complete fantasy that I was operating off of. And so when I had to get real with reality, it fucking hurt. Disillusionment is the experience of receiving brutal honesty when you've been operating from a fantasy. That's all it is. Yeah, there's some nuance here, right? Obviously, the meme is talking about people who don't give a fuck, who are just being honest to be assholes. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, let's not dismiss the concept of brutal honesty. Let's actually bring it back to what it is supposed to be and hold the pole for that to be honored. And I find it really fucking weird too. You've got these people who are like, we're going to wake up society and we're going to evoke consciousness. It's like, how the fuck do you think you're going to do that compassionately? How do you think you're going to wake somebody up compassionately? Because even if you rock them awake, there is a moment when they realize that they're not sleeping anymore and there is a disillusionment process. And it is slow and it's fucking painful. It's like seeing the sun for the first time of the day. You can't avoid it. You can only create so much space and love around it. It's like the idea of you're not going to avoid pain. It's life. It's human. To make mistakes is human. To fuck up is human. To be imperfect is human. All of it is just fucking human. Listen, I've been really avoidant of like actually serving glamour. There's like a whole part of me that just doesn't want to go into it. And then at the same time, it's like not revealing myself entirely, hiding, placating, people pleasing, sugarcoating, putting up a mask, putting up a facade. All of that is a major farce because I'm not saving anybody from anything by doing that. For example, if I show up as like the meek, polite, quiet girl, eventually the truth of who I am is going to leak through, and then anyone who opted into the mask that I was wearing feels manipulated, and they feel tricked. And you can't blame them, because technically I did. And so the game isn't, oh, let me put on a different mask, and let me put on something that's more preferable. The game is, let me actually reveal all of myself. And so that anyone I meet gets to see the raw form of me, and then they opt into that. Because if they can opt into the fullness, the rawness, the realness of me, then there is no manipulation. It's you opted in. You as a sovereign being opted into me. But where the disillusionment process comes in that hurts so fucking bad is when you're operating as the mask. When you go into the world and go, no, I'm polite and I'm meek and I'm quiet and I'm just whatever identity you put on. When someone comes in and says, hey, I'm going to be brutally honest with you, it feels like you're hiding. If you're actually receptive to it, it's going to hurt. And if you're not receptive at all, it's going to seem like it's violent, because disillusionment is just painful. You can't avoid it. The difference is whether or not you're going to receive it. Are you going to receive the pain when it's present because it's real and it's honest and someone loves you enough to give it to you? Or are you going to want someone to avoid being raw and real with you because you prefer your fantasy? And so in glamour, like, I don't even know what we're teaching yet, to be 100% honest. But what I do know is that I have spent so much of my life putting on different masks, and it takes so much fucking energy to uphold them. The deeper thing is I'm deeply unconnectable there. Any mask that I wear is deeply unconnectable. But when I slowly start to release them and I let them go and I show up at whatever capacity I have that day, I'm more connectable there. But it really comes down to whether or not I'm going to be willing to receive and provide honesty about who I am at all times, even if it shatters the illusion that someone has of me, and vice versa. See, if I'm wearing a mask, it also means that others can have their own ideas of me, their own fantasies and projections. And so at some point, I do have to be brutally honest. I have to take down the mask and show the brutality of me so that their fantasy of who I am can fucking fall away. Now, ideally, we'd be all walking around the world totally revealed and no one would have a fantasy. Everyone would see everyone clearly, but we just don't live in that world. We live in a world that is highly masked. And so releasing the mask, revealing the brutality, revealing the darkness and the complexity and the dynamic person that we are on the other side, that is going to be a painful fucking moment for anyone who's opted into the mask, who's opted into the fantasy, opted into the lie of you. So if we're going to be really honest, it doesn't matter the way that we deliver it. What matters is that we're willing to love people while we're on it. I'm not going to be here honest, drop a bomb, fucking walk away. That's not the game. The honesty is about, can I be totally revealed with you and love you as you process this and love you as you experience this and as you go through your journey of this. The way that I see it, honesty itself is about an honesty about me, right? Like, I can't be honest about you. Honesty is about who I am. So if I'm on a date with somebody, dating is always a great example. If I'm on a date with somebody and they go, actually, here's an example. Here's a great example. I was on a date like a month and a half, 2 months ago. And this guy, he's like, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm not 40. He was 45. And I was like, oh, like, thank you for being honest. And I'm a no, right? Like, there was just a clarity in me where I was like, oh, okay, I can receive his honesty. It's not brutal. I have no fantasies about this man. So therefore, his honesty isn't received as painful. But he had a fantasy about me. And so when I, in turn, gave him the honesty of, I'm really not interested in someone who's 45, he fucking lost it. Because he had this fantasy that if he was honest, then it was just going to be tolerable. And I would say yes, and it would be accepting. So my honesty was received as brutal because of the fantasy. It was received as brutal because of the disillusionment process of the fantasy falling away. His idea of me could not be upheld in the face of my honesty. Brutal honesty, I said it compassionately. It was still fucking brutal. It's brutal for the guy, right? And so this is what I'm saying is, like, if you have a fantasy about who someone is, honesty will always be experienced as brutal, and you're going to take it personal. But when you actually are open and you're really present with reality, there are no fantasies. And so someone's honesty doesn't become this painful thing that needs to be avoided. It just gets to be something that you receive and you accept and you choose and you respond to. That's it. So the thing that I want to say here is that, like, this is actually what it is to be human a little bit. This is the process of rehumanization. You've spent most of your life at this point putting on identities and performances and perceptions of self that you don't even really know who you are anymore. You've got this mask on, and the mask itself is just to refract anyone's sight, so they can't really see you. Because if they did, they would have to be honest about what it's like to interact with the mask when they know there's something behind it. You know, this goes back to the story that I mentioned the other day, where I had a friend of mine a couple years ago tell me that when I walk into a room, there's like an air, right? Like there's an air about me that is very captivating to people. But then there's like a handful of people who can feel behind the thing that I wear so publicly. And when they can't feel, like when they don't get to see that or experience that, it feels alienating almost, right? It's like this person comes in and they're so glamorous and they're so shiny and they're so charismatic. And then you're like, but wait, there's like a depth to you that I know exists. Why aren't you giving me that? Like, why aren't you bringing that out? Why are you still putting on the performance? Like, why are you lying to me, right? And I remember when he saw that, there was just like this painful blow to my chest. It was like ripping my rib cage open and letting wind blow on it, because it was like I got called out. It was like, oh, I can't lie to this man. I can't perform for this man. I can't pretend I'm somebody and I'm not in front of this man. Like he sees me even when I put on the fucking glamour, and he's not buying it anymore. And so in that moment, what people do is they'll start to pedestalize the other person. Like, oh my God, he sees me so clearly. It's like, but the work isn't that. The work is like, okay, fuck, I have to let down the glamour. Because what's happening is that people are opting into the glamour. They're opting into the facade and the presentation of me. But I'm not even giving anyone the chance to feel, see, and experience what's behind that facade. I'm protecting people from it. And not only that, I'm protecting myself from them not opting in. So it's like deeply manipulative. Thank you, Eli. Eli says, this is where you're so good. Thanks. Don't always feel it. Trust me. I'm going to be talking more on live stream. I've got a really... Glamour's working the fuck out of me. Let me tell you. It's so uncomfortable. But if this is something that resonates with you, that speaks to you in any way, I want you to consider joining Glamour. Okay, we start October 16th. It is 4 months for 12 women only. Some of the seats have already been taken. I've got my eye out for a couple of you who've been waiting around. You can pay in full, you can pay in 5 months, or you can do an extended payment plan and pay in 8 months. So there's plenty of spaces for you to figure out what works for you. If you need something a little bit more custom, you can message me and we'll talk about it. Included in Glamour is kerosene for the duration of your program too. So if you're someone who self-gaslights, it's, well, one, everybody does. It's a really great tool to have in your back pocket as you're learning to like dismantle the facade that goes up when you are. I'll leave you guys there. Love to hear your digestions in the comments when you're ready, and we'll chat soon.